Hi there, it is Saturday, so it's movie night, so I'm here with another quarantine quadruple feature for your viewing pleasure. We just finished our 21st week of quarantine, and this week we celebrated Gina's birthday. So last year, for her 30th birthday, we had a huge murder mystery party blowout. It was a blast. All of her closest friends were there. Obviously, this year was a much smaller affair. It was just the two of us, but we still had a pretty nice time. But in honor of Gina, I'm programming a quadruple feature that particularly lines up with some of her interests. Now, Gina is fascinated by magic. She loves going to the Magic Castle live magic shows. She likes watching close-up magic. She loves it. So we are going to be focusing on that for our quadruple feature today. We are going to be watching 4 movies dealing with magic, specifically with stage magicians. We're not talking about witches and wizards, nothing like Hocus Pocus or Harry Potter. We're talking about real magic or sleight of hand illusions, things like that. So our first movie, a little out of character for me, I'm screening another movie by the same filmmaker that I screened last week, and he's not a filmmaker that I would typically rave about, but I just happen to love 3 or 4 of his movies, and we're going to watch one of them today. I think it's probably the best movie about magicians. It is Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. The Prestige is one of his best told stories. The twists and turns that unroll in this script are quite impressive. It's about 2 stage magicians in the 19th century, played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, and they have sort of a friendly rivalry with trying to one-up each other with their magic tricks, trying to be the best show in town, but that friendly rivalry quickly turns not so friendly as they essentially devote their lives to besting the other magician, and it turns into a story of revenge with both of them trying to come out on top. And it is a story about how your obsessions and your passions can so easily consume you and every aspect of your life. David Bowie stars in a co-star role, brilliantly cast, as Nikola Tesla. Now, the same year, The Illusionist came out. This is 2006. Both of these movies came out against each other. And unfortunately, The Illusionist had the bad timing of coming out the same year as The Prestige because this was not really a hit. Unfortunately for The Prestige, this wasn't really a hit either. This did not have audiences turning out in droves. I guess audiences did not want to go see period pieces about magicians. But The Illusionist is okay, but The Prestige is a fantastic film. So that's the one that we are going to start with. I easily think it's Christopher Nolan's most underrated film and easily one of his best 2 or 3, if not his best movie. I do like Dark Knight quite a bit, and I think Memento is great, but The Prestige might be better. And then those are his 3 best, in my opinion, at least. We're not watching The Illusionist. Okay, our second movie, Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. Clive Barker got his start when he wrote a book called Books of Blood. Books of Blood came out. It was a series of short stories, obviously horror related, and there was a review for this by Stephen King. And the review was, "I have seen the future of horror. His name is Clive Barker." Or something. I'm paraphrasing. I think that's essentially what the review was. And that review made his career. He's one of the most prolific horror writers, and he had a very interesting film career. He made 3 films. His first film really kind of just secured his immortality in the world of horror. That was Hellraiser, which is now a classic. Launched a whole series of inferior films for the most part. And then he made a movie called Nightbreed, which had a lot of cuts forced on the film from the studio, and he had a really tumultuous relationship with getting that film out with the studio he worked with. And then a few years later, he made his final film, 1995, Lord of Illusions. And again, he had a lot of studio interference. They cut a lot of the gore out. They changed the story a little bit. They tweaked some stuff. So there's a director's cut that's about 12 minutes longer. That's his preferred version. Honestly, both versions, they have a lot going on. Clive Barker, he's an idea guy, and he puts a lot of ideas into his stories, and there's a lot of ideas floating around in Lord of Illusions, but most of them are really good ideas. I said we weren't going to watch anything with wizards. There's sort of a wizard in this movie, but this one is about a detective played by Scott Bakula of Quantum Leap fame. So it's like a noirish movie. It's like an old-timey detective type feeling film where he's trying to uncover a case of fraud, and he's tracking down this stage magician who people think can actually do magic, and he kind of gets into the seedy underworld of all of this supernatural stuff, and he finds a cult that's worshiping this evil wizard that's trying to come back to life and, kick off the apocalypse, what have you. What's really cool about the movie is I love grungy noir movies that blend with horror, and there's not a ton of them, but I love like a detective jumping into his case and a whole world that's right beneath the surface that's about magic or Satanism or monsters and shit like that. There's not a ton of movies like that, but it's something that I do really love. I think that's kind of a fascinating angle on detective stories. It's very much in line with Angel Heart. I mentioned this last week because last week Alan Parker died, the filmmaker who made Angel Heart. But Angel Heart is really one of my favorite noir horror movies, and this one has kind of a similar tone to Angel Heart. Again, we're not watching Angel Heart, but Lord of Illusions is quite similar. This one is also kind of neat because there's a scene that actually films at the Magic Castle. If you don't know what the Magic Castle is, it's basically this big castle in LA where they do magic shows. You can like walk from room to room, and there's secret passages, and there's all this wacky shit in there, and you have to get invited by a magician, and there's magicians doing close-up magic, and there's different sized rooms. There's really big rooms where they do magic shows. There's just kind of one-on-one, like the bartenders will know magic and stuff. So it's a pretty cool experience, and they actually film a scene in the Magic Castle, which is pretty rad. So our second movie is going to be Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. Okay, moving on to our third film. So there's a filmmaker named Jacques Tati, and he has passed away, but he was a filmmaker that was very famous for the comedies that he was making in France. And the movies that he would make were almost like silent films. They were very visual comedies. There was a lot of physical comedy. They were really funny and really remarkably made and paced. When you watch them, they hold up as really funny, entertaining films. He was very much like a comedic genius. Years later, after he passed away, in 2011, there was an animated film called The Illusionist, which is from an unproduced screenplay by Jacques Tati. Now, the movies that Jacques Tati made were totally singular to his vision. It's not really a style you can replicate. It would be like if you tried to make a Chaplin movie. You can't make a Charlie Chaplin movie. You can't make a Buster Keaton film. You can't make a Harold Lloyd film, and you certainly can't make a Jacques Tati film. That's kind of how influential their presence is in the films, and how they made the films, and how they did the jokes, and how they did the pratfalls and the stunts. That's all so specific to their style. So you can't really make a Jacques Tati film today. So the only way you could really do it and have it kind of even resemble the same type of magic that he can have as a filmmaker is by making it animated. In The Illusionist, not to be confused with This Illusionist, a French animated film, and it's hand-drawn animation, which you don't see very often anymore, and it's absolutely beautiful. It is more or less a silent film. It's all about the visuals, and they tell the story completely visually. It's from the filmmaker Sylvain Chomet. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. Before this, he had made The Triplets of Belleville, which was another animated film. Absolutely beautiful hand-drawn animation. This is about a stage magician, and the times are changing, and people aren't really into stage magicians anymore. They're starting to get into rock and roll. They're getting into other types of live performance. So he's booking gigs wherever he can, but the audience is never really that interested. It's very much about the passage of time, how art changes over the years, how audiences start to have different interests, and if you don't adapt and change, you kind of disappear with the art form that you are stuck practicing in. He takes a gig in Scotland and he meets a young woman that changes his life. His life kind of goes off in a different direction after that, but he still kind of pursues his magic. So it's very simple. It's very touching. It's sad. It's a remarkable film, the likes of which we don't really see very often anymore, in part because you don't see hand-drawn animation very frequently, also in part because most films, particularly American films, don't really like delving into melancholy. We want films that kind of uplift us predominantly, and so you sometimes have to go into other countries to find something that feels a little more authentic emotionally, like The Illusionist. Okay, our fourth and final film. I showed some films by this guy recently as well, so we're doubling up on some of our filmmakers. This is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. From 1958, we're going to watch Ingmar Bergman's The Magician. The Magician. It's about a group of traveling entertainer magician type folks led by Max von Sydow, and they travel from town to town entertaining. And they get to a town where the constable and civil servant and physician want a personal performance because they want to know if their show is legit before they write off on it and let their citizens start watching this show. So it is somewhat of a battle of wits. It's kind of a comedy. It's kind of a drama. Some unexplained things happen. You don't know if it's real magic, if it's staged. It's a really interesting film that examines Bergman's favorite topics: love, life, and death. And it's a thought-provoking film, and it's one that's really interesting and really, of course, well made, like all of his films. But The Magician takes a different look at magic. But all of these films are very different. This might be the most varied night of quadruple features that we've had so far. All four of these films are just worlds apart from each other. These are the four movies that we're going to be watching for our night of movies about magic and magicians: Christopher Nolan's The Prestige, Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions, Sylvain Chomet's The Illusionist, and Ingmar Bergman's The Magician. Short and sweet, keeping it simple this week. Movies about magic. I hope you have a magical evening. Hope you're staying safe. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Thanks.